naming a flower after themselves as a way to remind themselves to think of their own nourishment and their own needs and their own self-care, that we're inclined to think of everything else first and not really tune into what we need ourselves.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Witchy Wellness. Again, I'm your host, Lauren, and this is a show you learn how your body and emotions are not in the way. They are leading the way. And today we have a lovely gardener, Rebecca Lyons. She is a mom of 3 from Ireland with a career of over 25 years in the financial and commercial roles in industry. But after trying just about every idea from juicing to journaling to keep her frazzled head above the water, she eventually came back to gardening, which she loved as a kid. Now, having reaped the benefits and the wellness and beauty of getting her own garden in order, Rebecca is on a mission to spread the love. She would love to inspire women running out of their rope everywhere to find joy in getting their hands dirty and then sitting back and enjoy smelling the roses. Ugh. She runs a free online Facebook group and does one-on-one video garden consultations and workshops. Rebecca also gives talks to other wellness audiences on how gardening can play a big role in self-care. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you very much, Lauren. I'm delighted to be here and to speak with you and your audience.
Me too. We've never had anybody on here for gardening specifically. And talking off here, hearing your story, and how we do all the things that we think we need to be doing, like you said in the intro, journaling to juicing. We all know what we should be doing, quote unquote, but sometimes like that trying and searching and grasping for it doesn't work. So you kind of found a different way for you, because it's literally connecting with your roots, pun intended. I'm sure the show will be filled with really bad but good puns. Gardening. Could you kind of tell us, the bio always sums it up so beautifully, but could you tell us your journey from literally being an accountant to now in the mud and loving just smelling the roses? What was your own heroine's journey that really allowed you to connect to you and so much more?
Oh, yeah, sure, no problem. So I've always loved gardening. My mother was a keen gardener, and her uncle, my granduncle, was extremely gifted as a gardener. I didn't really understand it as a kid, but I totally appreciate it now. He was fastidious, the way he kept his seeds and his shed and everything was all neat as a pin. And I stood at his elbow watching him do what he was doing, and uh, looking through all his seed catalogs in the winter and all this stuff. But I didn't fully, I suppose, appreciate how lucky I was to have that as part of my background. And I always had some kind of a garden since I had my own place, even if it was only a few window boxes. I always had something. Um, and it wasn't until I took it for granted. It was no big deal. It was just something I did. I wouldn't have considered myself especially great at it or anything, but it was just one of my hobbies. And that was fine. I was working away, had done everything right, gone to college, got my degrees, did my further education, qualified as an accountant, got the promotions, kept working and working and working, and had a job that I loved. I genuinely did love it, in a business where I thought I was making a useful contribution, and everything was tickety boo. And then I had children, and with the first child, it's okay. I was ticking along. I managed that, but by the time I had my third child, it was starting to get the accumulation of years of juggling, I think, were catching up with me. And when COVID hit, it really was difficult. I know across the world there was the closures and everything. In Ireland, they went for a really severe shutdown, and it was prolonged. So there was no childcare and no schools, and I needed to be on. By that stage, I had a fairly senior position. I needed to be on site, and we were making essential products for healthcare and food industries. So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And while all this was going on, the writing was on the wall that probably I needed to make a big change. Like that, all the yoga and meditating in the world was not going to solve this problem. That really I needed a root and branch relook at everything. But that was a very difficult decision for somebody like me to take. I had spent years and years working to this, and I was finally starting to earn some decent money after all the years of putting up with the rubbish money. So it was very difficult to kind of wrap my head around the fact that this might be running out of road. And I suppose to try and distract myself from it, I took to my garden. I didn't really intend to go out there looking for peace and calm and all the butterflies and all that stuff. That wasn't really the intention. I think I was just looking to exert a little bit of control on one bit of my life that I could control. That I think that's as simple as it was. However, I noticed over time that it was starting to bring me some of the peace that I was, I suppose, as you described, grasping for elsewhere. So I was starting to get some of the benefits of it without trying so hard. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, oh my God, this was under my nose all the time. This is under all our noses all the time. Like, because even if you don't have your own garden, there's community gardens, and there's always a way. And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of thought, I don't really hear anyone talking about this in the way I feel about it. So bit by bit, little by little, initially it just gave me the time to kind of calm down and make a sensible decision to leave, and to leave a career that I loved in a dignified way that befitted all the years I put into it, and to not just run out the door, or do something drastic. Like I managed my way out of it in a properly professional way. So the garden definitely did that, absolutely did that, because there was days when I'd have happily put the pedal to the metal and never look back. But yeah, so the garden definitely did that, and that's how I came to. So I took the decision to leave. The garden allowed me to do it in a dignified way. And then once I was out, I started to think, oh my God, there's an opportunity here to really go after this and spread the word and try and help other women, because I was acutely aware that the situation for working women depending on what career you're in, of course, but in the kind of career I was in, is very difficult. Like, it's very difficult to have a senior position and to be a present parent in the way we want to be. Many of us want to be anyway, present parents. And I just really feel strongly, I have two daughters, and I just really feel strongly that I want to do something to improve it. Now, I don't know, nobody knows how to fix this, right? Nobody knows the answer of what the work-life balance is, or what the balance is in a couple, or how you figure all this out. I don't either. But I thought, in the meantime, I can help them realize that the gardening is out there, that can help to buy them a bit of time, if nothing else. So that is how I got into the gardening.
Ah, so beautiful. It just naturally blossomed, if you will. My mom is going to be so proud of this episode because she loves puns. So many puns. So I'm going to have to definitely shout out to mom if you listen to this. The things we teach our children.
Oh, this is it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so much in gardening. But actually, that is one of the clues, right?
Yeah.
The fact that we use this gardening and growing and nourishing and flourishing and finding your roots and grounded and tree poses. The fact that yoga uses so many poses that refer back to plants and to nature. It's not an accident, it's not. The Garden of Eden was a garden, like everywhere you look, you start seeing, oh my gosh, it is kind of everywhere. And you start to realize, yeah, I don't know how did I not think of this before now,
And I hear what you say, that work-life balance, and whether you have kids or not, when you're really ambitious as a woman, I feel like you think you need to do it all. Maybe you want a family one day or have a family, and you just keep juggling more and more and more. And the time you spend connecting with yourself or with nature, or, the higher power, your higher self, it just starts to go down and down and down and down. And I love what you said, is like you were doing all the right things that you thought you should be doing to find that connection. But when we're in that mindset, and I'm the same way, is like we're so addicted or programmed to be in that thinking mind, the worrying mind, the not present mind, because that's how we got to this point in our lives, because we made sure to plan out and try to control everything that we could in order to balance all of this weight. And gr- grounding in the garden really allows you, there's so many different benefits, but I know you speak a lot about the power of the presence, and that's what you found through this gardening. Could you talk to us about your experience and maybe, some tips that the women listening today, whether they have a garden or not, can really kind of use this practice to become more present?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I started thinking about it, I could contextualize my experience in the garden within all the other things I had tried. So I think it was probably the fact that I had been grasping so hard and trying so many things that I actually could identify, oh, hang on, that's that. And oh, that's the other, I could recognize what was happening because I had been trying so hard with so many different ways to find a bit of peace. Um, so I think one of the reasons why that it works is, and why it brings you into the present, is because it automatically is tuning you into probably more than one of your five senses. Like all five senses are engaged in gardening. So I mean, you go out, you're in contact with the soil. That's grounded. That's the sense of touch. Your sense of smell with the flowers, and even the soil. When you disturb soil, there's chemicals that interact with chemicals in your brain and set off a positive chain reaction. So there's the sense of smell is working at a very deep level. And of course, like everyone knows, you know, it's aromatherapy, perfumes, everything are based on plants in the first place. So, of course, the sense of smell is involved in it. Your sense of touch, obviously you're grounded, but you're also touching flowers. Sometimes you get stung by a nettle or you get pricked by a thorn, and nothing like that to bring you in the present. Like that fairly pull you up. Your sense of hearing, because you're listening to, you'll hear bird song, you'll hear bees, you'll hear the wind rustling, or even just traffic. Like I know it's not that exciting, but it does bring you into where are you, what are you listening to, where are you now, and your sense of taste. You will you can grow things. Obviously you can grow food. I'm not the greatest food grower in the world, but I still grow bits and pieces. I only grow what I know I'll eat, because it's quite a lot of effort to grow food. So you definitely don't want to go to all that effort and grow something that you're not bothered about. And trust me, that definitely will not win points with the kids. So definitely only grow what you want to eat yourself will be one of my tips. um but even if you don't eat it, like you can still have herbs. You can have um plant something like rosemary, because it can grow anywhere. Like you can grow it in a pot, you can grow it in the ground. It's drought resistant, which unfortunately we all need to be, I suppose, a little bit more conscious of. You can use it in table arrangements and floral arrangements. You can cook with it and, put it in breads even. And it's also aromatherapy. You can just pull off the leaves and put them in a bath. So that will be one of the ones that I think actually it's evergreen as well. So in my part of the world, that's very important, that you have something in the garden when it's not gone in the winter. So yeah, that's probably, that would be my beginner's tip. Get yourself a little bit of rosemary, because there's something for everyone. And when you become a little bit more advanced, it's one of the easiest ones to propagate. So you can grow more rosemary plants really easily from a single rosemary plant, which means you have plants to give to other people and spread your love. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think the reason why gardening works so well for self-care is because it engages so many of your senses, and it pulls you into the present even when you're not trying. You don't have to be coming at it head on. It works. It works its own magic.
Beautiful. And for me, thinking about, historically over time, humanity, we were mostly outside, really, for the whole of humanity. And I think just the fact of being with nature, whether you have a well manicured garden or not, or in the process of it, I think just that connecting to that, because we're not apart, we're not separate from nature, we are nature. And for me, if I'm having any type of a quote unquote bad emotion or day, just getting outside, into the sunlight, putting my feet on the ground, just that little bit connects me back. You can just feel your spirits lifting. And I think in our modern society, we're on the computer right now, glued to the computer, our phones inside, and we really lost that connection of who we are, because we are part of all of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's a special kind of a hobby to have, because the process obviously gives so much, as I'm explaining, but the outcome gives so much. Then you have a space. After you finish gardening, you put down your tools. It's never finished. Like, there's no finished garden, but after you've stopped gardening for the day, you get to sit out and just take a deep breath, of fresh air. Like, that's magic of its own, as you described, just going out into it. And you also have a space for you to enjoy yourself. Actually, it's interesting. A lot of my clients are women with children like myself, and they're not all, but a lot of them have children. And I expected them to say, oh, we want somewhere for the children to play, and a mud kitchen, and swing set and all that. No, like, I think something like 93% want somewhere for themselves. So yeah, you get a room of your own outside, and yeah, that is one of the things. And then you have somewhere to put down a yoga mat if you want, like, it's a gift that gives on an awful lot of levels.
And for me, thinking, I mean, this is Witchy Wellness Radio, so connecting to the cycles of nature and the moon, and just like life itself is not linear, it's cyclical. And just having that space that's your own to connect to that, remind yourself that, this too shall pass, whether it's something good, but also something, maybe more difficult to deal with, and just being with the nature. And no matter what part of the world you're in, it's just, something doesn't bloom all year. There's cycles, just like I'm thinking of the really famous Buddhist quote, like, no mud, no lotus. Is like, you have to really deal with that mud and love that process, and then you can grow into and blossom. There's not, just, you can't just appreciate the good. It's really about fertilizing and the process of getting into the roots and the weeds and the mud in order to appreciate the whole process at a deeper level too.
Oh, absolutely. You really are reminding me of so many things when you're
Yeah.
talking, because yeah, over here now, right? It's very cold, and I can do no gardening. So for somebody like me, who, like, the industry I was in was male dominated, I think that was part of the problem I had, through mimicking their behavior. And I'm not trying to be binary or anything, it's just a statement of fact. But I think by trying to mimic that, I had lost more touch with my feminine side and my nurturing side, probably. But yeah, so I have become used to go, 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 go. But winter's here now. I can do absolutely nothing, like, bar dream about what I'm going to do next in the garden, or throw a little bit of fleece on some of the plants that I'm hoping to, get them to survive the frost. And I, like, that's an amazing gift to get, that you just have to stop. Yeah, like, you have to stop gardening. There is no choice. And the cycle is there all the time in loads of ways. Like, yes, when I cut down some of the dead-headed flowers and stuff after they've bloomed and have gone off, they become the compost that I use in the spring. So you're constantly recycling what's in the garden is going around, and it's the food for the next generation of plants. Their babies are going to be the generation, and you're saving the fruit, you're saving the seeds for next year. But they can do nothing now. They have to wait for their time. I can't decide I want to plant these seeds now. Well, I can, but I'm wasting my time because they're, they have their time and this is not it. So I must wait for the moment. There's other things too, from in a cyclical kind of way, because I don't know, you're probably way too young to know this song, but there's a song called Coming Around Again. And I played it over a reel over the summer, but I was probably lost. I think a lot of my audience were younger there too, but I think it was probably lost in them. But my point was that, you know, if the plant didn't bloom this year or it didn't go to plan, it doesn't matter. It's coming around again next year. You get another go. So no matter what happens in the garden, okay, I know you have to wait. You can't demand to plant it, in the autumn. You must wait for the spring, but you will get spring. Spring will come and you will get another chance. And it is always coming around again. Like that's it's just a lovely thing. I did another one actually. I did another, you remind me of another one. I did another reel about turn, 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 to everything there is a season. And that is, okay, it's a quote from the Bible, but the song is the Birds song. And it is the truth. Like that was the leaves turning colour in autumn. And it just, to appreciate this as well, that it's lovely. When autumn comes here, I live in a very rainy part of the world, Lauren. It's usually our biggest problem is it rains too much. And sometimes the ground is just too mucky to work with, and I was showing pictures to, I suppose, reassure my audience that look, even my garden is a mess at the minute, and I said, but look up. I just turned the camera up and you could see that there was loads of little crab apples on the tree, that the leaves had all fallen down, but there was still beauty to be seen in it, so you just have to, I suppose, alter your expectations maybe. It can't always be July, it's not always July, but there's something beautiful in every month.
I totally, totally, totally agree. And the part about the connectedness, not only with yourself, but the nature. And you talked about really using the dead leaves and the flowers as compost and, growth for the next generation. And I know you really love talking about connectedness and how gardening as a practice, passing that along. I know there's so many ways to jump into this, but could you talk to us about how gardening really can apply connectedness in so many areas of our lives?
Yeah. So look at tuning into yourself through the presence is fab. But I think this is where gardening is like so much bigger than people might really think when they think first. So one of the things so I've already described it was a granduncle and my mother who, started me off in gardening, even though they didn't. I just stood beside them when they were gardening. There was no big, ceremony or anything. But they planted the seed in me, that was in me to tap into when I needed it, when I was very stressed out and none of my own methods were working. It's funny how I went back to what I knew when I was 4 and 5, and it was gardening that saved the day. And I plant plants that remind me of them all the time. Like, for example, my mother always told a story. My birthday's in September and there's flowers here. I'm sure there's these grow in Florida as well. They're called sweet peas. They're really fragrant, multicolored, really fragrant, very girly flowers. So definitely, if you don't know them, look up sweet peas. They're the easiest thing in the world to grow. And my mother told the story that when I was born, that granduncle that I was talking about brought this massive bunch of sweet peas into her in the hospital. Yeah. So every time she'd see him, the reminder of her. So I always plant sweet peas. And I teach my kids how to grow them. And, I always think of my mother and I think of when I was born, and they grow the same as the way all kinds of peas grow. They have these tendrils that allow them to curl up, and I think, oh my gosh, it's like it's like a child clinging to its mother. It just, there's so much in that I just think it's fabulous. But so yeah, I feel connected to people who are important to me through the gardening, not just the dead people. Like people give me presents of plants, or when I go around, oh, that's a lovely shrub. They give me a little bit of it. And I go around my garden, I'm not looking at plants all the time and connecting with myself and the presents and the smells and the sights. I'm there, oh, look, there's that now that Tom gave me, and there's something else that Mary gave me. And look, that's going great this year now. She'd be delighted to see that. And I'm having memories of all these lovely people who thought kindly of me and gave me presents. And sometimes I have too much of certain plants and I dig them up and I give them to other people. And I know they think of me. I know they do because they tell me, oh, your Rebecca's are going great this year, And isn't it lovely? It's like having a photo album, like a metaphorical photo album in your garden, going around and seeing all this. So connected, and I'm planting the seed of my own kids, like there are different ages and stages. It comes and goes, depends. Some of them are bothered and some of them are mad into it and then they're not into it next year. But I love to think that they'll have the basics if they ever need it, like what my mother did for me, that they will have some kind of understanding that this can be very good for you, and that there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So I hope that I'm passing that on. In this day and age when we're all so remote from each other, like on these screens, and it's great. Like, how else would I be talking to somebody from Florida without this? It's fantastic. But you can lose track of the real world, especially after all the COVID lockdowns and everything. It's a great way to get into gardening, to have a look at the plants that are growing in your neighborhood well. So if you don't know what to do, you don't know where to start, right? The temptation is to go to a garden centre or pick up plants in the supermarket, or I'm not sure where they sell them in Florida, but they're the kind of places here. But a kind of more smart way to do it is to look at what's growing well in somebody's garden who knows gardening. So you'll know it because it'll be the one with all the lovely plants. And they're the plants to look for because they clearly grow in your area, in your soil, in your conditions. And if you happen to spot them out in the garden, they will tell you how to do it. They'll tell you how to grow. Oh, I really love that flower. They'll tell you what it's called. They'll tell you how to grow it. They'll probably give you some of it. And look, there you are connected with a neighbor you mightn't be connected with otherwise. It's another little branch back out into the real world, And there's, as I mentioned before, but community gardens and all those allotments and opportunities to get involved with other people. It's a lovely way to connect.
Beautiful. When you were talking about, receiving plants or giving plants and thinking about them, for me, it's like that's connectedness, but it's just like you mentioned a photo album. It's a gratefulness practice, going through and just really opening your heart, just remember feeling those good feelings.
Yeah. And I tell you, I suppose at times when I'd be low, myself, there's plants in the garden that were given to me as gifts of thanks. So it's something nice. And it's lovely to be reminded, whatever has gone wrong today or whatever mess I've made of whatever it is today, that day I was good. That day I did something nice enough that lady gave me those flowers, or, that it's a reminder, of how one bad day isn't your whole story, or one bad deed isn't your whole story. There's way more to everybody than that. And it can be very useful. Actually, this isn't my tip now. I did see this on the Humans New York or one of those pages. Somebody described naming a flower after themselves as a way to remind themselves to think of their own nourishment and their own needs and their own self-care, that we're inclined to think of everything else first and not really tune into what we need ourselves first. I thought it was a brilliant idea. So I know, brilliant idea. So something I'm going to
Beautiful.
do.
And I know, I just thought of another thing. I think he's a Japanese doctor, Dr. Emoto is his name. He's done a lot of research with talking to water and plants, and either saying hateful words to it, or just I love you, you're beautiful. And the actual crystal and the molecules of the water itself completely change. So when you are sending it love, it's this beautiful symmetrical, pattern. But words of hate or just, negative emotions were just not organized, just sporadic, just didn't look like the same cell at all. So I know I've heard people talking to their plants. I like talking to my plants.
I talk to
Yeah.
mine, but I would always be nice things, I would
Yeah.
go, especially the young ones. It's amazing actually, especially the young ones when they're growing. I mean, oh, come on, you can do better. You'll be
Yeah.
okay. It's all right.
And I think a great way to teach us how to talk to ourselves, right? When we're having those bad days, when we are going through it, or just the season of life, like
Mm-hmm.
our winter, if you will, it's like, okay, how would I talk to my plants? How would I talk to a friend? And really learn to reparent yourself in a way.
Absolutely. Like it makes me a little bit sad that that's so hard to do, that we'll talk to this plant nicer, to some random plant, that, nicer than we'll speak with our internal voice, which is, it's a sad thing, but I suppose once you're aware of it, you can start trying to break the habit of it. But yeah, it's a sad habit that we have. Yeah.
But something that we can change and something that gardening can
Absolutely.
definitely
Absolutely.
help enlighten us. So I know it depends on where you are in the world, but if somebody's interested in kind of getting into gardening or they're new to this, do you have any other tips you can give them to want to start this practice for themselves, no matter where they are?
Well, yeah, no matter where
Yeah.
no, I do genuinely. My tip about keeping it local is my first tip. Like, I really do believe in that, because that is the key to figuring out what's going to work in your garden. Look at what's growing in your locality and use that as your starting point. The other thing I would say is to keep it simple. um Kind of keep, if you can, try not to have an expectation of, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon as a starting point. That might be useful, because I think that is another thing gardening teaches you, right? It's like every like any of these practices, it does not respond to instant gratification requirements. You have got to have a little bit of patience. So a tiny bit of effort in a consistent fashion will get you way more results than going mad for 2 Saturdays in a row in March, So um, your back will thank you for it, and your garden will definitely thank you for it. So I would say try and do a little bit and more often than going for the big blast. That would be another thing. And take photos as you go along, because it's not instant gratification, it can feel like you're getting nowhere, but you are. Even a couple of months intervals makes a massive difference. So you'll be so surprised at what a little bit of effort over time can add up to, like with all of this kind of self-care stuff. But you can actually see it with gardening if if you take your photos. So that'll be another one. Like rosemary is a plant for a total starter. I'd also say, and I'm not too sure about this in Florida for now, but it would be worth looking into. And if anyone is interested, they can certainly contact me and I'll help them. Spring bulbs, because while, yes, you must rest in the winter and you can't grow things, winter can be fairly bleak in some parts of the world. Certainly in my part of the world, it's darker, it's all a bit more miserable. And while, yes, we know spring is coming, spring can take its time. So it is nice, while you're waiting for the spring to come, to have something coming up. And the spring bulbs, you can, depending on what you plant here, no more than anywhere else, you can have some of them coming up very early in January and February. And to see those little buds pushing themselves up out of the cold ground, and you can, well, if that can do it, if that little thing can push itself up, I can do it, I can keep going. Or it's something to wait for. You're kind of waiting to see how long is it going to take. So I really think spring bulbs are something they're easy to grow. You can grow them in a pot, you can grow them in a windowsill, you can grow them anywhere. And they give you that little sense of chink of light when it's dark. Yeah. So maybe my tip.
Oh, beautiful. I know I'm originally from the Midwest, and my mom, I remember so many years of planting those bulbs, the tulips and the daffodils. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's so exciting because you're like, what's coming up? What flower is it? What color is it going to be? It just for me, that's just the glimmer of hope. Like you said, spring is coming. It's, this shall pass too. So that's, what an awesome way to continue this practice all year round. And I know you have a free ebook that might kind of add to their tips, the 5 quick garden wins for
Yes.
everybody. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's just for total beginners wanting to get started out. My way of teaching gardening is to keep it all simple and uncomplicated, and where shortcuts can be taken legitimately, I give away all the shortcuts, because I think the most sustainable way of gardening is a way that you can keep gardening. And if you make it too complicated, and if you're trying to follow it to the absolute nth of some of the expert gardeners' advice, which is 100% correct advice, but it's not always sustainable for somebody who's got a busy life. And my garden is the busy woman's garden, and busy women need to find a way to fit this in with all the other things that the busy women have to do. So I want them to keep it going. So my 5 quick garden wins are ways of doing that, ways of getting the absolute maximum out of your garden with the most sustainable amount of effort. So yeah, that's the intention.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that'll be in the show notes so you guys can download that as well. But thank you so much, Rebecca. I can't believe we already, time flies when you're so present talking about gardening. Thank you for coming on today so much. It was such a pleasure to have you on, and I learned a lot, and it was just reassuring. It felt like a nice big warm hug about connecting with yourself and nature and in your garden.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm so delighted that you feel that way, but it was been fabulous speaking to you too.
Yeah.
And I hope that somebody will go out and plant something now. That's all I hope for, that somebody will have a rethink.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we close the show the same way every week. And like I said before, thank you so much for your time and presence and connectedness today on the show. How may we, as an act of gratitude, be of service for you, or, plant a seed, if you will, to pay it forward for your time and love today?
Oh, well, I would love if they planted a plant
Yes.
first. That would be my main. Plant anything or buy a plant and keep it. That would be my first one. But if they wanted to check me out, I'm the Busy Woman's Garden on Facebook and Instagram. And I'd love to see them in the Facebook group if they have time. I'd love to connect with anyone. And if anyone has any questions at all, I really, really welcome them. And don't be one bit shy. And don't think it's too simple a question either, because we all started off somewhere, and not everybody is lucky to have the mother who was into gardening. I understand that, so I'm be delighted.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. It was such a pleasure having you on today.
Great, thank you too, Lauren.